This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop.
Got it.
Stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
6 after on this Wednesday. Welcome to it, my friends. This hour brought to you in part by Mesa. Good health, good business, and great schools. Appreciate your support of the program. The hotline number is 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. I want to introduce you to somebody that you've probably never heard of, but you should have, and you should be hearing about going forward, but you probably will not, because his narrative doesn't fit the model that they want it to fit, you see. But David Evans is a mathematician and an engineer. He's an Australian mathematician and engineer, but formally trained. He has 6 degrees. 6 degrees. Well, I'll give you a couple of the highlights. A PhD, a doctorate in electrical engineering from Stanford. Okay, he received that in 1989. He also has an electrical engineering degree from 1983 from the University of Sydney in Austria. But I think a PhD, a doctorate in electrical engineering from Stanford gives him some credibility. And from 1999 until 2005, Evans worked in the Australian greenhouse office. He was creating models to follow global warming. Okay, he contributed to the development of the full CAM, a fully integrated carbon accounting model for estimating and predicting all biomass, litter, and soil carbon pools in forest and agricultural systems for the Australian government. Full CAM, by the way, part of Australia's national carbon accounting system, received a special achievement in GIS awarding at the 2010 International User Conference. This is why this is important. He is now a former modeler for the government of Australia's greenhouse office with 6 degrees in applied mathematics. Dr. Evans has unpacked the architecture of the basic climate model, which underpins all climate science, i.e., global warming, climate change, these sorts of things. Dr. Evans has found that while the underlying physics of the model is in fact correct, it has been applied incorrectly. He has fixed two key errors, and the new corrected model finds the climate's sensitivity to carbon dioxide is much lower than was ever thought before. It turns out the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has overstated global warming figures by as much as 10 times. 10 times. Now, this isn't some quirk or some, weirdo on the internet. This is a guy with a doctorate in electrical engineering, a mathematics professor, his doctorate from Stanford, 6 degrees. Guy's a genius. The CO2 has an effect, he says, but it's about a fifth, but more likely a tenth of what the IPCC says it is. Carbon dioxide is not driving the climate. It caused significantly less than 20% of the global warming in the last few decades, he says. Well, that's a bit of a problem, don't you think? 2 members of the Free Republic's thread on this issue claim the discovery was more along the lines of data being rigged via the hard coding of the math, or more simply, the program was put together to take any data that went into it. Didn't matter what you put into it. It would spit out the exact same results, and a whole lot of people bought it. That, my friends, is what we call a scam or a scheme. It was all rigged. It was all rigged. Giving yet another climate skeptics taking raw CO2 data and demonstrating that the infinitesimal global changes in CO2 worldwide are seasonal, and that the numbers are so small as to be negligible if billions of dollars were not on the line for the scamming parties. It's safe to assume that among the deniers, the CO2 theory is now a moot point when it comes to climate change and worldwide fluctuations in global temperatures. So what exactly causes this? Dr. Evans does have a theory on that. Solar activity. Solar activity. Where have you heard that before? If you ever listened to this program, ocean currents and solar activity have the most dramatic effect on the temperatures and the changes of temperature on the Earth's surface. But because it's always been that way. Yeah. Solar activity, what he calls albedo modulation. The waxing and waning of reflected radiation from the sun is the likely cause of global warming, says Dr. Evans. He predicts global temperatures, which have plateaued, will begin to cool significantly beginning between 2017 and 2021. The cooling will be about 0.3 of a degree Celsius in the 2020s. Some scientists have even forecast a mini ice age in the mid-2030s. So there you have it. Solar activity, the reflectivity of the radiation and the energy of the sun. Not your Suburban, not your pickup truck. Not all that different than what has been observed pretty accurately since at least the 17th century, actually, is what this all comes down to. Since the sun is basically snoozing these days, a very quiet period for the sun activity, sunspots, all of these things. One writer suggested it's time for her to start crocheting socks, hats, hand warmers, slippers, scarves, cowls, and all that stuff because we're going to need it because it's about to get cold. And not because you drive an SUV and not because you live in America, not because you believe in the free market. No, sir. Because of the sun's activities. Now, how are they going to teach that to your grandkids? Oh, we were wrong about this. We were wrong about that. The hotline number, if you ever want to join the conversation, 888-900-9966, 888-900-9966. Now I direct your attention to something just a little bit different. I direct your attention to the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page. Go find the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page, and I'm challenging you on there to come up with the best costume possible. I don't have much for gifts, but I tell you what I can come up with. I can come up with a couple of passes to the Best Maze Corn Maze, which you can find, by the way, at bestmaze.com. A couple of free passes there to the Trail of Terror and the Best Maze Corn Maze, and why not? It's Halloween, and that's only probably for you folks down in the southern part of the state. I understand that. For those of you up north, easy for me to say. For those of you up north, sorry, but I'd like to see your best costume for Halloween. I've got a challenge on there. I've got a little video for you to watch, and you can answer the timeless question: what is so creepy about clowns? You can answer that timeless question. Go to the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page, check out the video, post up your pictures, and show me what you got. Make sure you click like. Make sure you tell your friends and invite them to like the Steve Gruber Show as well. But a little video for you there of me getting ready for Halloween and challenging you to show me exactly what you got, what your best costume ideas are. What are you going to go as in 2015? Halloween, by the way, the number two holiday now when it comes to spending money. And why not? It's kind of fun, a day to pretend to be something that you're not. 14 after, check it out on the Facebook page. It's the Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games. We got everything you want. How do we know the names? We are the people that can find.
All right, 18 after the hour. 18 after the hour now, and welcome back to the program. We spent a lot of time talking about the infrastructure of what's going on and what's not going on, and things that are working and things that are, well, clearly not working. And we spent a lot of time here in Michigan talking about the funding of roads and so forth. But the problem is also nationwide. It's not something that's limited just to what we've got going on here. The federal government running out of money to fix roads. The $50 billion per year highway trust fund is in trouble. Here to talk about it, Michael Sargent, writer with the Washington Examiner. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we spent a lot of time here in Michigan. In fact, it's been a political battle for the last 2 or 3 years, and it came to a head in November when we turned down 4-1 a proposal to raise our taxes in Michigan to focus on the roads primarily. So they're back at it. But on the federal level, big trouble too, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You have the Highway Trust Fund running a $15 billion annual deficit, even though it takes in a steady stream of revenue from motorists who pay into it through the 18-cent gas tax. That's primarily because of mismanagement in Congress. They've taken money that's supposed to go to highways and roads and then taken it and spent it on transit projects and a whole host of local issues that the federal government has no business in.
Well, there's a lot of places the federal government has no business in. But so what does it mean for the lowly citizen, just the guy that goes to work every day to pay his taxes, that expects that if he gets on an interstate highway that it should be in reasonable working condition? What happens to us?
Well, people should be frustrated. The system could be run a whole lot better. Because right now, like I said, the federal government is just mismanaging it in a top-down way, and then you have gridlock in Congress. They've been trying to pass just some sort of long-term funding, and they can't even get that done right now. It looks like the T&I committee in the House is responsible for coming up with the legislation to keep the Highway Trust Fund buoyant. Isn't even going to have anything done by the end of the when the bill dies at the end of the month. So they're going to have to do another short-term extension, and so you just see this constant gridlock. They haven't done a long-term bill since 2012, but that might be a good thing, because the Senate's long-term bill that they passed in over the summer just makes the problem worse. They make the deficits go up by $35 billion over 6 years. They say nothing about the funding, and so the fund would be in even worse shape 3 years down the line when it runs out of its bailout cash.
It's just baffling, isn't it? I mean, isn't it just baffling how we sit here? It really is. I mean, and this is just one example. I'm just thinking and sitting here and thinking. We have set all new records almost every year of my life, a new record in the amount of money that the federal government takes in, and the state governments, for that matter, take in, right? You keep setting records for money taken in, and yet they spend it so fast with so many new ideas how to spend more and spend more and spend more. And this is not just Democrats. They get a lot of the heat for this, as they should, but Republicans are right there on the gravy train slopping it up too. And at the end of the day, we have so much debt. I heard a stat: if we paid back $10 million an hour or something, we wouldn't pay our debt off in this country for 5,000 years, something like that. Well, how do we ever?
It's quite frankly troubling. If you just look at the federal government, transportation is just a tiny piece of it, and they can't even manage that well. The Highway Trust Fund has a $180 billion spending deficit over the next 10 years, and it has a very steady flow of revenue. It's from the gas tax, so it has a dedicated funding source, and they can't even manage that correctly.
It's disheartening, is what it is. It's demoralizing, because I know how hard people I hang out with work. I know how much time Ivy and I put in working here, and all the things that we do, and all the taxes we've paid over our lifetime. And yet the taxes we've paid, we owe more today. We owe more in taxes today, and debt and so forth, by many multiples since the day we were born. And the money gets squandered in so many different places, and they all blame each other. They all run around pointing the finger at each other. Leadership would be a nice thing. Leadership on managing the economy and acting like adults. That would sure be something to consider, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that highways, everyone sits in traffic. It's extraordinarily frustrating. I think that this is a prime case for giving states much more control. Because, you guys, you turned down that raw deal that you got in Michigan. I don't see that happening at the federal level when you have so many different legislators from so many different states quibbling over the money, where it goes, overspending. This is why the states should be able to take control of their highway funding and decide what they need. California can spend it on the transit if it so wants. Texas should spend it on its roads. Every state would be able to meet its unique needs much better than the current system, in which it's funneled through the federal government extraordinarily inefficiently in a top-down, one-size-fits-all system.
Yeah, and one size doesn't fit all. But you sit here and you wonder, I mean, I had this conversation just last night. Ivy and I were out talking to some folks, regular listeners to the program here. And we have more natural resources in America, be it timber or farm country or oil and coal and natural gas. And yet we continue to squander our resources and try to figure out how we can't use our own natural resources. America is blessed with the greatest pile of natural resources of any piece of real estate in the world, period, paragraph. We should be flush with cash, flush with great infrastructure, flush with everything we need. And yet we sit here and quibble about how not to use it because it might cause, a tadpole to die somewhere or something. And it's mind-blowing to me. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that, like I said before, that has a lot to do with just the way D.C. is structured. The current system, especially in transportation, it encourages this top-down, extraordinarily costly system. You have money that's essentially being funneled through middleman, administrative costs, skimmed off the top, and then sent back to the states to build extremely necessary roads and bridges.
Yeah.
And congestion this year is worse than it has ever been before.
It just gets worse every year.
Cannot act and get anything done.
Michael Sargent, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. Michael Sargent from the Washington Examiner here on the Steve Gruber Show.
Delivering Michigan common sense with a big dose of truth and honesty.
I wanna live, I wanna give. I've been a miner for
It's Wednesday, and I appreciate your
it's these
I appreciate you listening. Your patronage is appreciated. That's how we build the program. We have two new affiliates we're going to announce here in the next few days. Two brand new. We actually might have more than that, but I know that I've got two coming in the next, I guess I'd say before the end of the month. So you'll be able to fill in some of those dead zones, if you will, here in Michigan with more of the Steve Gruber Show and the Michigan Talk Network and MTN News, of course, with Melissa and Heidi. Katie, that is. Let's see here. Nathan Mehrens is president of the Americans for Limited Government Foundation. He previously served as ALGF's general counsel. And the conversation, and this is one that's going on all over the country, union transparency, how to make Michigan public unions more accountable. Franklin Roosevelt supported unions, the New Deal and all of that. But he did not support public unions because he knew that the relationship would be potentially corrupt from the get-go, which has proven to be very true in many places because public unions accept great deals from politicians and then tell the politicians they'll turn out and vote for them all of the time. The taxpayer's money is in play, and the taxpayer has no representation at the table to speak of. Nathan Mehrens, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
So give me an idea here. How do we make Michigan public unions more accountable?
Well, I think first a bit of background is in order. The way that union financial transparency works for unions is different depending on the type of union that you're talking about. For unions representing employees in the private sector, there is a good level of financial information that they are required to provide to their members, in this case to the U.S. Department of Labor. Unfortunately, for public sector unions, those at the state and local level, there's not really any sort of disclosure at all, other than three simple line items that go on a form that gets sent in at the end of the year that tells the gross number that the union spent in three categories, such as collective bargaining, which doesn't really tell you a whole lot about how they actually go about their business. So I think that states like Michigan, which have made great strides in the last few years in improving employee freedom, should take a hard look at increasing the amount of information that unions are required to provide to their members in this context.
Well, okay, so tell me, how do we get these answers? I mean, here's the thing. These unions claim that they have the ability to that they're private. These numbers are private, and they have privacy, and yet we're the ones funding the bill. And so I think that it should all be open. I think the book should be open for discussion all the time, especially in a day and age when we're broke. Let's be honest, we're way over budget on, everything. And everybody's in debt. Every small municipality, every county, every state, and the federal government, is that a mess? And so I think these public unions owe us all a lot of explanations. And I think that it should be open and transparent as to who these unions support for election, who they're voting for, who they're endorsing and saying you should vote for this person, because they do it all the time. and I think there should be for everyone.
Sure. Well, if you look at, again, how things work in the private sector, for decades, unions have been required to file annual financial disclosure reports with the Labor Department. There's a system in place for that works very well. Any union member who works or who is part of a private sector union can go to unionreports.gov and look up their union. They can see how much their union spends in a variety of categories. They can see how much they're paying their officers. So, the notion that some sort of privacy interest, would make it impossible for the union to do its job is just a straw man argument.
Of course it is. I mean, of course, it's a straw man argument. They don't want to open their books. They don't want to say, "Here's how much money we've taken in. Here's how much money we spent on this candidate and this candidate and this candidate." It would blow their cover. I mean, let's be honest. It would blow their cover completely off for a lot of these folks. But again, if it's the taxpayer that's footing the bill, which indirectly or directly is the truth of the matter, because it's the taxpayer that's on the hook to cover the compensation for wages, for retirement, for health care coverage, and everything else, then I strongly believe that we have a right to know how that money is moving around.
Oh, absolutely. It's the same as any other type of vendor to the state and local governments, that there should be a good level of transparency there. And even beyond that, like I said, this works very well in the private sector, and there's a number of instances I could point to where union members in the private sector have been able to take a look at the information that's been filed and make changes to their union. If a person having access to all this information makes an informed decision that being a member of the union is a good thing for them, that's their prerogative, but they need access to this information in order to be able to take that kind of action. And the way that it currently works in Michigan for members, or for unions that represent state and local employees, there's just no good information there. So a lot of instances, the individual union members, may or may not desire to be a member of the union, but they are not in a position to make an informed decision because they don't have the access to that information as it currently stands.
Yeah. So we have no leverage here, is what you're telling me. We have no leverage, no way to insist, to demand, I guess, Nathan, that we get what we need.
At this point, you would require a change in state law to mandate that an increased level of transparency be provided to union members at the state and local level, and that is something that I have advocated.
Yeah. So where do we go from here then? I mean, clearly we have an interest, you and I as taxpayers and all the taxpayers listening today, we have a strong personal interest in knowing financially how these things are done. I think we would be better served if we had a better knowledge of how money was moved around and spent on a pretty much regular basis, because it's pretty clear the politicians, as a general rule, have no ability to control themselves when it comes to spending and moving money and padding their own pockets and padding the pockets of their constituents and their special interest groups. They're like Pavlov's dog when they see cash and they can't help it. They can't control themselves or their emotions. So we would be better served if we had a handle on it, we being the taxpayers, of what was going on. So how do we change things? How do we change state law? How do we move forward?
Well, the recommendation that I have is to take a look at how this works in the private sector, looking at the federal law on point, which is the Labor Management Reporting and Disclosure Act, and the reporting regulations that surround that, and apply that type of system to state and local government employee unions in Michigan. I've recently written a report on this issue that can be found on the website of the Mackinac Center, which is mackinac.org. It's called Bringing Union Financial Transparency to Michigan. And there's a lot of information and background in there about the reasons for why this needs to be done, as well as suggested language for how Michigan's policymakers could take a look at this and pass a state law requiring this type of transparency.
No, and that, I think that's a long way to go, and wonder if it would ever happen, but you're on the right track, and I greatly appreciate it, Nathan. I appreciate you stopping in.
You bet.
There you have it, everybody. Nathan Mehrens, president of the Americans for Limited Government Foundation. How to make Michigan public unions more accountable. And who knows? Is it going to happen? Well, a lot of these are, by definition, special interest groups that are protected. that are protected, and therefore, the politicians aren't going to out them per se, right? Not going to out them per se and protect the people that vote for them. And you wonder why people get upset. 41 after the hour, it's the Steve Gruber Show.
Michigan, born and raised with Midwestern values and Michigan common sense.
I've got to run to keep from and I'm back.
A lot of conversation, including right here on this program, when it comes to background checks and where they should be applied and how it should work. And to me, it doesn't make much sense to do background checks if you go to a gun store and not do a background check if you do a private party sale. Filling out a yellow sheet to me seems to be, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it across the board. The whole thing about gun show loopholes is kind of a non-starter, because if you go to a gun show, as a general rule, the vast majority of the people selling guns or things of that nature at gun shows are licensed gun dealers to begin with. So by law, they are required to fill out the paperwork. So this notion of a gun show loophole is kind of a nonsensical thing. But when you have a gun sale between two neighbors or two complete strangers because they met on the internet or whatever, there aren't background checks. Here to talk about that, Chief Dan Roberts, retired assistant director for the FBI in Washington, and now local police chief as well here in Michigan. Chief, welcome back to the program.
It's good to be with you, Steve.
So the National Instant Check System came out of the Brady Bill in 1993, I believe.
Correct.
That's where it originated.
Right.
Does it work?
It does work. I mean, and every year since, particularly since the Obama administration, the amount of gun checks that are processed through the FBI's NICS program has increased exponentially. And I think they're up, over 22, 23 million checks a year now that is processed through there. But, there's flaws in the system, and the flaws are not the crime data generally or the arrest data. That's the easy part of it, to identify those individuals who have been arrested before for something that would prohibit them from buying a gun. That's the easy part, because we keep a lot of great records at the FBI on stuff like that. The hard part is the mental health data. And, getting those records into the FBI's NICS system has been a challenge, and that is largely a political issue that a lot of politicians, in fact, I will say most politicians, have no desire to address, because it's one of those things that's too hard to take on. It's a very complex problem.
Yeah, here's one of the things that I hear people say that, when they talk about background checks, and most people agree that, okay, if you have mental health issues, you should be excluded. The concern they have is pretty straightforward. Well, what if I take anxiety pills? I took a Xanax in my life, so therefore, you've had anxiety, you can't have a gun. You've been treated for depression, you take antidepressants, you can't have a gun. Hey, your neighbor says that guy's just kind of screwy.
Right.
That guy down the road there, he's a little off.
Right.
I mean, at what point? So there's the point, because make no mistake, we all get the fact that the people on the left would like nothing more than to end private ownership of firearms in America. That's their goal. And they keep that. It will never change. They may say, well, we support the Second Amendment, except that. But for the fact of the matter is they don't support the Second Amendment. The American Civil Liberties Union doesn't even believe it exists, for example. So there are concerns when it comes to mental health and how it gets reported, I guess.
Well, I agree with you. And the issue is right now, the standard, there's a lot of gray area. As you pointed out, where do you draw that line? Does somebody has a very mild form of depression, say, or somebody that has been involuntarily committed for very significant, obvious mental issues? And that's where the line is drawn now, where, somebody who has been involuntarily committed because of, obvious or pretty apparent mental issues is where the line is drawn now. But you talk about the yellow form at the beginning of your segment here. You go into a gun dealer and you fill out the yellow form. It's largely up to you to declare, yes, I do have a mental issue, or no, I don't. The same is true for the drug question. If you've ever filled that form out, are you an abuser of drugs? Well, who in their right mind is going to check yes on that if they want to purchase a gun? And so the same is true for the mental health issues. There's really a difficulty in identifying those individuals who have been even involuntarily committed, and meaning a police officer or a paramedic or somebody has observed such unusual behavior that it required them to be institutionalized at a hospital for evaluation for a period of time. And even those records are woefully inadequate in the databases now.
Well, right, and the other concern that has been put forth, stay on this mental health conversation, the other concern put forth is that people won't seek treatment because they don't want to lose their gun rights. They won't follow the proper protocol.
Right.
Because they're concerned, well, I've got this issue and I'm bummed out and, I've got these problems that I'm facing, except that I'm not going to go see my doctor because if I do, they're going to disqualify me from having my rifle to go hunting this fall or my pistol to defend myself or whatever it may be. Right. That's a real concern. It's
a real challenge, and that's why, our politicians and our mental health professionals have to sit down and figure out where that line is going to be drawn, and then they also have to figure out what kind of reporting mechanisms are going to be put in place to make sure those folks that are obviously have problems that shouldn't own guns be reported, because as it stands today, that is not being done. I can tell you firsthand after running that program that is not being done in all states. Now, some states are good about it and some are not, but the states have to rely on information provided by medical health professionals a lot of times as well. So it's one of these things that's going to have to be taken up and fixed by law. And I agree with you. I'm not a doctor. I would never be able to know where that line should be drawn, but certainly these mental health professionals should know where that line should be drawn.
Well, you would think, but what if you get a mental health professional that's, an anti-gun person, and then, so there are concerns there. But on the other side of it, and real quickly, I think that, owning a gun is it's an awesome responsibility. And I don't mind filling out my yellow sheet, and I don't mind, making sure that, I answer some questions there. And I think it's appropriate if my neighbors do the same thing. Now, I want it all registered and kept in a database? No. Do I want them to, then follow that up and say, hey, throw your gun into the dump truck here so we can take it away? No, obviously I don't support anything of that notion.
Right.
I'll give you 15 seconds for the last word, Chief.
Well, the way we have it now is every state handles it a little bit differently. And, that's one thing that we need to probably standardize from state to state. I know that in my time in the FBI, I got transferred a lot. I lived in 8 states. And just from personal perspective of being a gun owner myself for, since I was old enough to own a gun, every state that I went to had different ways of registering or not registering their guns. And there is no uniform policy involved in that. And, somebody has to make a decision how we handle these mental health issues and how we handle these purchases, and it should be uniform.
All right, 55 after on this Wednesday. The hotline number 888-900-9966. Steve on the hotline. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. This business with the federal government coming into Michigan and shutting and telling them they've got to shut down specific power plants. What happened to states' rights on this thing?
There aren't any. Yeah, there aren't any. The fact of the matter is, the state in this particular case could have pushed back and defended itself, I believe, and they elected not to. You have this push for green energy, which is going to be a financial disaster for you and I, and not to mention rolling blackouts are being predicted by, the power companies to become the new normal in Michigan. I'm sorry, we live in America. We have more natural gas, more oil, more coal, more anything than pretty much anybody on the planet. And we're going to be sitting in the dark with candles, and our freezers are going to, let our food, rot because we have rolling blackouts. Is that really going to be the new normal here while we, hug and sing Kumbaya and look at the beautiful windmill? I mean, what a bunch of nonsense.
How long has this information been out about this man that reworked the model on the computers to measure carbon dioxide and all of that?
What I can tell, just a handful of days. And just so we understand, Dr. David Evans is from Perth, Australia. He was Australia's guy when it came to, figuring out global warming, how they're going to deal with it. They started running the math, and now he's what they call a denier. He said the math doesn't work. You've got this screwed up. He has, like I said earlier, he has 6 degrees, one of those being a doctorate, a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford. Among his 6 degrees, he is a mathematician engineer. I mean, this guy is a rocket scientist. And he said, listen, your numbers are wrong, and the way you're applying it is wrong, and you're overstating the effect of carbon dioxide on the atmosphere by at least 10 times. And it's out there. His name's Dr. David Evans. You can look it up at a variety of places. And you should. Steve, thanks for the call. I got to run. 57 after now on a Wednesday. We'll have more after this break on the Steve Gruber Show.